There are love stories, and then there is Wuthering Heights, a novel that does not so much tell a story as it exhales a curse across the decades. It is a book written in bone and storm, where love is not redemptive but ruinous, where the dead refuse to stay buried, and where the moors themselves seem to pulse with a wild, inhuman grief. To open its pages is to step into a world where the very air tastes of salt and vengeance. Emily Brontë published Wuthering Heights in 1847, a year before her death at the age of 30, under the androgynous pseudonym Ellis Bell. She was the fifth of 6 children, raised in the isolated parsonage of Haworth, a windswept village on the Yorkshire moors. The Brontë siblings, Charlotte, Branwell, Emily, and Anne, created entire imaginary kingdoms in their childhood, populating worlds with Byronic heroes and tragic romances long before they set pen to published page. Emily, the most enigmatic of the sisters, was described by Charlotte as possessing a secret power and fire that could be felt but never fully explained. The novel was met with near-universal shock and moral revulsion. Early reviewers called it coarse, disagreeable, and a compound of vulgar depravity and unnatural horrors. One critic wrote that it might have been written by a fiend, a backhanded tribute to its raw, unflinching power. The Victorian reading public, accustomed to the moral uplift of Dickens or the domestic realism of Austen, found themselves staring into an abyss. They could not understand how a woman, or anyone, could conceive of characters so brutal, so unredeemed, so utterly beyond the pale of civilized feeling. And yet, this very incomprehension is the novel's first great achievement. It refuses to be tamed by the moral categories of its age. At the heart of Wuthering Heights lies a relationship that defies every convention of the romantic novel. Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw do not love each other in any way that society would recognize as healthy or even human. Their love is not a gentle flame but a wildfire, possessive, violent, and ultimately self-annihilating. When Catherine declares, "I am Heathcliff," she is not speaking metaphorically. She is articulating a bond so total that it obliterates the boundaries between self and other. This is not the language of courtship, it is the language of ontology, of two souls fused into one turbulent entity. And yet, she marries Edgar Linton, a man of comfort, of softness, of civilization, and in doing so, sets in motion a tragedy that will consume 2 generations. Bronte's narrative structure is itself a kind of haunting. The story is told through a double frame, the genteel, easily frightened Lockwood, who stumbles into Wuthering Heights as a stranger, and the earthy, pragmatic Nellie Dean, who recounts the tale from within. Lockwood is the reader's surrogate, a man of the drawing room who is utterly unprepared for the raw, elemental violence he encounters. Nellie, meanwhile, is the keeper of secrets, the witness to every cruelty and every tenderness. But neither narrator is entirely reliable. Lockwood is too naive to understand what he sees, Nellie is too complicit, too entangled in the lives she describes. The story, then, emerges not as a clear narrative but as a series of echoes, each retelling layering new shadows over the original crime. And then there are the moors, not a setting but a living presence, a landscape that breathes and hungers. The moors are the only place where Heathcliff and Catherine can be truly themselves, running wild as children, defying the boundaries of property and propriety. When Catherine is buried, she is not laid in the churchyard but on the moor, facing the heights. When Heathcliff dies, he is buried beside her, and the local villagers swear they see their ghosts walking the heath together. The moors are the novel's true home, a space outside time, outside law, outside the cramped morality of the Victorian drawing room. #dark themes. Revenge is the engine that drives Wuthering Heights, not as a subplot but as a structural principle, a curse passed from generation to generation like a poisoned chalice. Heathcliff's campaign against the Earnshaws and Lintons is meticulous, almost architectural in its cruelty. He marries Isabella Linton not for love but to degrade her, to claim her property, to wound Edgar. He raises Hareton Earnshaw in ignorance and brutality, stripping him of his inheritance and his humanity. He forces Catherine Linton, the daughter of his lost Catherine, into marriage with his own sickly son. And yet, for all this calculated destruction, Heathcliff is never a mere villain. He is a force of nature, a creature shaped by the violence done to him, the orphan child brought to Wuthering Heights, degraded by Hindley, denied Catherine, reduced to a gypsy and a devil by a society that could not see past his darkness. Class and race simmer beneath every interaction. Heathcliff's origins are deliberately obscure, found on the streets of Liverpool, possibly of Irish or Romani descent, marked as other from the moment he arrives. The Lintons call him a little black thing, and even the Earnshaws, who take him in, never fully accept him. His eventual wealth does not erase this stain, it only makes his presence more threatening. He is the outsider who seizes the inside, the colonized who becomes the colonizer, the orphan who inherits the world and finds it empty. Brontë refuses to sentimentalize him. He is both victim and perpetrator, and the novel offers no easy judgment. Domestic abuse is rendered with unflinching clarity. Heathcliff hangs Isabella's dog, throws a knife at her, and tells Nellie that he would not strike a woman, but only because he finds subtler, crueler forms of torment. Hindley beats Heathcliff as a child and later descends into alcoholic rage. The novel does not look away from this violence, nor does it excuse it. Instead, it presents a world in which cruelty is as natural as the wind, and love is inextricable from pain. This is the novel's most radical gesture, it refuses to separate passion from destruction, to pretend that one can exist without the other. And then there are the ghosts. Catherine's ghost appears to Lockwood in the first chapters, her hand scraping against the windowpane, begging to be let in. Heathcliff, upon hearing of this, opens the window and cries out to her, calling her to walk the earth for 20 years rather than rest without him. The supernatural in Wuthering Heights is not a Gothic flourish, it is the logical extension of a love that cannot be contained by death. The dead do not haunt because they are restless, they haunt because they are still in love. #Legacy. Wuthering Heights has outlived nearly every novel published in its era, and its influence is immeasurable. It stands at the crossroads of Gothic and Romantic, taking the castle-haunted terrors of Radcliffe and Walpole and transplanting them onto the bleak, real landscapes of Yorkshire. It anticipates the psychological depth of Dostoevsky, the savage family dramas of Faulkner, the mythic bleakness of Cormac McCarthy. Without Heathcliff, there would be no Rochester, no Mr. Darcy's darker kin, no brooding antiheroes of 1,000 romance novels, though none of them capture his particular, inhuman intensity. The novel has been adapted countless times, most famously in the 1939 film with Laurence Olivier and Merle Oberon, which softened the story into a more conventional romance. The 1992 version with Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche restored some of the novel's brutality. And then there is Kate Bush's 1978 song, Wuthering Heights, a fever dream of a pop song in which Bush, then only 19, channels Catherine's ghost, her voice soaring and breaking as she sings, "Let Me In." It is perhaps the truest adaptation of all, not a retelling but a possession, a moment when the novel's spirit escapes the page and takes on a new, strange life. #Lessons. What does Wuthering Heights teach us? Not that love conquers all, that lie belongs to lesser books. It teaches us that love and destruction are often the same thing, that obsession is a form of prayer, that the past is never past. It teaches us that revenge is a meal best served cold, but that it will poison the one who eats it. And it teaches us that some bonds are too deep for words, too violent for comfort, too real for the consolations of morality. The novel ends not with a moral but with a quiet, unsettling peace. Lockwood visits the graves of Heathcliff and Catherine, lying side by side on the moor, and wonders how anyone could imagine the dead sleeping peacefully. The final image is of the heath, the sky, the wind, and the lingering sense that some loves are too wild for heaven, too fierce for hell. They belong only to the moors, where the wind never stops howling, and the ghosts never stop walking.